folks are aware. So everyone, welcome to the day 3 of the Peralta Equity Conference. I'm Amy Borges in the biology department at Laney College, which is one of the colleges within Peralta. And I just wanted to introduce Debra McLaughlin here, who's from Natural Science Program Director at University of Maryland. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use virtual labs, which is great because a lot of us are still doing some online work. So Debra, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm also going to turn off my camera just so there's more focus.
Sounds great. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks everyone for being here. I want to thank specifically the the Equity Conference organizers. I know Kevin is one of those, and the Peralta Community College system for supporting all of this important work. Not only this conference, but you provide many resources online that are very helpful to us. We have at our university, at University of Maryland Global Campus, we have a really high contingency of underrepresented groups, but we just discovered the Peralta Community College rubric in some work that we're doing. And so the work that we're doing now brought my attention to this work that you're doing. And I've been very glad to be here and learn so much and discover so much this week. So if you all could, I put some information in the chat already that I'd like you to access. You don't need to access the YouTube, but if you scroll up in the chat, there is information with a URL for the virtual labs and a username that you can use to log in, so that during this presentation, you can look around the virtual labs yourself. If you have multiple screens, it helps. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, because what we've done is we've given you access to the labs for a week. So you can play later. You can focus on the presentation right now, so you don't have to go back and watch the presentation again while you play around in the labs. So it's up to you what you'd like to do this morning. I know it's early. If you haven't had coffee, maybe you want to play instead of listen, but I'm giving you options. And I'm going to try to advance my slide. And I am going to turn off my video for now, just to save bandwidth. All right, so the topics we'll cover today are in this list. So mainly we'll talk about kind of our University of Maryland Global Campus, UMGC's journey with labs, and give you an opportunity to participate in some of the labs that we're using right now. This is just a little reference to the proposal that I submitted and the objectives. So we are going to look at the practical advantages of virtual labs for engaging students, and we're going to do some demonstrations. So the online equity training, which is freely available to us, the materials and modules are freely available to us, which I really appreciate. And as I mentioned, I just discovered these. I appreciated even this information from the first module, which talks about the populations that face equity challenges. So first generation to attend college, working, responsible for children and family care, low income, African American and Latinx, and academically underprepared. And what's so interesting about that is our student population. So on UMGC, we have 66% of our undergraduates are first generation to attend college. 80% work full-time, 50% have responsibilities for children or family care, 48% are sometimes challenged with their income and expenses, and 44% are from underrepresented minority groups. Additionally, our population is located all over the world. We are largely online, but we do have a presence on the ground overseas as well. Because we are highly military connected. More than 50% of our students are military affiliated, active duty, spouses, veterans, and also dependents. Many of our students are on remote islands or ships or submarines. So As a university whose responsibility it is to meet the requirements of the University System of Maryland for students to get their degrees, we need to present lab courses. Now, the University System of Maryland requires at least 1 credit of lab science in order for a student to meet the requirements for a degree from the University System of Maryland. We have a very high presence online. More than 80% of our courses are online. However, we still have, for many years, since UMGC, the University of Maryland branch that we are, has been in operation since the 1940s, since World War II, but we've still been offering students a lot of hands-on lab experiences. Many of us are very traditional faculty I should say faculty from traditional backgrounds, and we were professors at other colleges who taught in hands-on laboratories and were pretty much wedded to that idea. But being with the University of Maryland Global Campus and seeing some of the hurdles that we've encountered, we started to come around to understanding that we needed to come up with some alternatives. The university, we do try to make the learning experience and the cost of education reasonable for our students. So 90% of our courses are using open resources. 3 out of our 7 different laboratory courses also use open educational resources. We've built some of these resources in-house. So we had a pretty large course development division, and we built some labs in-house. We contracted out some labs. We even had some virtual labs as early as mid-2000s. We also have some courses that use the PhET simulations. And we have largely, until around 2017, depended on hands-on kits. So even a university that has a very high online presence still relied on hands-on kits. But now we are using some virtual labs from Tabletop Science and McGraw-Hill. And recently, as of this year, we're excited that we're using some virtual reality labs, and we're doing this for our anatomy course that we're offering. So you probably already recognize the role of science labs in higher education. It's typical requirement for most degrees. It's a good way for students to understand and learn the importance of following procedures, protocols, and techniques. It's a way for students to learn to collect data and draw conclusions based on evidence. And it's a way for them to test ideas and gain new insights from the results that they get. And of course, there's the aspect of quantitative reasoning and applied math, putting the theory of math into practice. So we intended for whatever labs we use, they should still do all of the things we need labs to do. And so it was important for us that students be able to demonstrate quantitative reasoning, that they can demonstrate interpretation of data, and showing that they are drawing conclusions from evidence. So we had a lot of problems with the hands-on labs. As you heard, our students are located all over the world. So we needed to accommodate that. Some students would enroll the day of the course, and it was important that they be able to get the equipment as soon as possible. With hands-on lab supplies, there was a tendency to run out of the supplies, and students wouldn't be able to repeat experiments. And we found this particularly difficult for students who did come from underprepared backgrounds because they might not have had good experiences in other academic settings, such as high school, and they might not have the comfort level to follow procedures as cleanly and efficiently as someone who had more practice, say in high school. We really wanted them to be able to play and learn, trial and error, make mistakes, and not feel pressured or stressed, or that they were somehow an imposter. We were really concerned about that. The shipping costs were another issue, because as you heard, we really want to use open educational resources, but sometimes it's important that we create the resources we need, and labs are a kind of unique in that sense that it's not so easy to have them be completely free. The hands-on labs also were largely rudimentary. So we wanted to really be able to engage students and have a little bit more sophistication in some of the labs and questions that they were asking, and some of the hypotheses that they would generate and test. And then, because these are high enrollment courses, we often had to deal with issues of academic integrity, where students were posting their work at websites. And of course, those websites encourage additional posting of their work. And it was the number of objects there from the courses was becoming unmanageable. It was just difficult to ask Course Hero to take it down when every semester, it's almost a full-time job to continue to ask Course Hero to take your materials down. And a lot of these labs were not accessible or ADA compliant. I myself have worked with some of our students to complete the labs, and I think one of my colleagues on this meeting right now wrote an alternate set of instructions, and I know that's not even how we want to address accessibility. We want students to be able to do the same work, and so we really wanted to get around a lot of these issues. And so when we moved to virtual labs, and like I said, we did this, we made the initial move in 2017. So it was before the pandemic, because of these kind of intractable problems that we were experiencing our students were experiencing specifically. So these virtual labs are able to accommodate people all over the world. Students can gain access immediately. There's no shipping delays, and it eliminates the problem of running out of supplies, and students can repeat the experiments, and they don't have to be stressed or feel that they're not capable. They don't have to feel intimidated because of maybe not following the instructions perfectly the first time. They can do it over and play and learn. There's no shipping cost, and we were able to work or look at vendors who had somewhat sophisticated experimental designs, so that students might ask interesting questions rather than very simple kind of middle school, high school type research questions or lab questions. But even in our search for virtual labs, we still encountered some issues. Some of the virtual labs that were out there had very complex interfaces. So we were concerned that some of our students might still struggle with that and might feel intimidated by that. And many of the labs that are out there are geared towards science majors, and our largest contingency of students are non-majors who need to complete these science courses in order to meet that 1 credit lab science requirement from the University System of Maryland. Many of the virtual labs we encountered were not ADA compliant. Some of them had only multiple choice assessments associated with the lab, which don't permit open-ended answers, which don't allow students to demonstrate to the instructor that they understand what they're doing, they understand how the data connects to the result, how the data connects to the conclusions and interpretations of the data. Many of them have only one solution set for all users, which makes them vulnerable to academic dishonesty. And as far as we know, this might not be totally true. I do think some publishers and vendors are starting to understand the importance of monitoring the internet, but we saw that a lot of the solution sets from some of the virtual labs were on the internet, and those numbers didn't seem to change. So we knew we would probably again have the same issue of students having the ease of access to answers that were already available to them from other students' submissions. So we were fortunate to be able to partner with a virtual lab developer, Tabletop Science. There are several advantages to the team who created the Tabletop Science Labs. They have more than 20 years experience teaching online and working with adult learners, military active duty and veterans. The interface was simple and it was perfect for non-science majors or introductory science courses. The interface supports accessibility technology, and we'll talk about that more, or you can check the video for the link that's in the chat, and you can see some of that accessibility options in operation. And also the Tabletop Science Labs, they monitor the internet for the appearance of course materials, and they issue takedown notices. So the features, these features are essentially built into Tabletop Science. So the friendly interface, accessibility, clear specific procedures, trial and error learning, reproducibility, and sorry, my strip is covering. Okay, yeah. Oh, and enhanced data security, which I'll talk a bit more about in a second. All right, and so the goals of our laboratory assignments were the same as you would for a hands-on lab. Essentially, we want them to do the procedures. They need to do some calculations. We included background readings, so it's completely contained within the virtual lab, so students have all the information they need to answer the questions. And so students don't need to rely on their textbook or go back to the course materials in the course. Everything is contained there. We want them to do hypothesis testing also. And so the student flow is they sign into the website and they get access to the background, the procedures, the activity forms. They do the data runs, make the observations, collect the data, populate those into the data tables in the activity form, and then they would answer the questions on the activity form. Also providing the screenshots of the labs, and I'll explain to you why that's so important in a second, and submit all of that to the instructor. All right, so here, yeah, if you haven't already logged in, please do so. So you're going to log in at tabletopscience.com. That's your username, temp-equity.ttx, and you will have access to these labs until May 6th. So feel free to play and enjoy your experience there for the next week. And that is in the chat, by the way, if you didn't write that down or type that in as quickly as I just passed through that. So you'll go into the labs, you'll see a notification about copyright. So we would like the students to be in their minds to keep academic integrity at heart as they're working through the course. Like I said, we tried to make these accessible and friendly and engaging so that the students aren't tempted to go elsewhere. And we think we've achieved that. We think that, well, tabletop science has achieved that, and we've embraced all of the features of these courses for our students. And here are some of the labs that you'll see when you go in. So I'm just listing them all for you. You will see a link for biology, nutrition, physical sciences. And we work with tabletop science to decide what labs we want to include for each of the courses. So this can be a mix and match. If you had some other course or if you were teaching biology and you would like the calorimetry experiment lab to be over in your biology course, you could work with tabletop science to do that. So if you just choose a subject area and choose one lab that you might want to look at, you will see these tabs. So the background reading I already mentioned, it's fully all the information is there, all the reading, all the vocabulary, all the calculations. Then there's procedures, which is a detailed step of how to conduct the experiments. The activity is where you do the lab. So it has the experimental tools and introductions. And that's where we need the students to capture the screenshots to show their work, because their names are on that screenshot, showing that they are the person who's doing the activity. Then the activity form has the tables, the data tables for students to submit the results, as well as specific questions related to the assignment. And I will talk about the faculty only area a little bit later, but that's providing the faculty with very clear guidance. So this is an example of an activity, and some of you might have already gone in, and you can go to an activity now and look at something if you'd like and test it out to see how it works. And this is the activity form. Now here, the student will get this is the activity form tab, but the student can grab the activity form here. It's a Word document, and this can be modified, or faculty members can create their own. So you could work with tabletop science to modify this document for your use, or you could use the labs, create your own separate data tables, questions that you could have the students use for your courses. Even though they would use the same lab setups, you could have unique questions and tables for them to fill out. And there's also one other point I want to make here about the activity form is there are specific data items that students might need to complete some of their calculations or complete some of the answers on the activity form. So it's important for them to read every tab, read all of the content on every tab, so they know exactly what's there every week, so they don't miss anything. This is another feature of science courses, is making sure you're detailed oriented and pay attention to the details and instructions that are provided to you. And just a quick look at accessibility. If you look at the video link in the YouTube at some point, you will see these demonstrations of accessibility. So there's tab navigation, which is an accessibility option for people who might want to have that kind of access. And there's also a voiceover for the labs. And so you can see that there's a lot of information provided in the voiceover and the transcript of the voiceover. I thought this was interesting, and there was I heard a talk. I think it was here at Equity. Yeah, it was here at Equity. I think yesterday, of a young woman who used some of the accessibility tools, although she did not have a disability. And I think it would be very helpful to students to use some of these tools. For example, there are probably plenty of students who see this H2O2 and not realize that that is hydrogen peroxide. And this text, the voiceover and transcription of that voiceover, tells the students that that is the bottle of hydrogen peroxide. So it could be helpful for our students, especially our underprepared students, who might not always connect what's in that background and procedure section over to what they're looking at on the interface. And this is just showing you how, for accessibility, it will walk you through. So as you start a process, it will walk you through exactly what's happening during that process. So the person listening to the voiceover will be able to hear what's going on. The gas bubbles form in the solution, and then here it tells you that the data run was complete, and it tells you what the results of the data run are. I don't know how many of you on this meeting right now have those features on activated on your computer, but you could do this today. You could have voiceover on some of the labs that you're looking at this morning. Okay. So we can try one. So if you want to go, I think your menu, you have an option here that says course menu. I have something called lab menu. But if you go to your course menu and go back and go to the nutrition subject area and click on lab 1. And you can choose any of these that you like. This is I'm starting with this one because this is a fairly simple experiment. So there's an ignition source, and you're going to place a food item here. And this is essentially how calories are measured in food. Ignition and burning is breaking the bonds in the food, which is comparable to breaking the bonds through digestion when you're eating your food. In fact, when we eat, there's a thermic effect of food. So there's a heat generation. The calories refer to heat. And so the temperature change in the water is proportional to the amount of energy released by the burning food. And so students are expected to collect the temperature change of the water. And then I'm trying to go to the next slide. And then this is the activity form. They enter that temperature change. They use a mass of water, and they are going to use information about the specific heat of water or specific density. I'm sorry, at this moment, I just mixed up which one it is. And they are going to compute the energy transferred to water, which is proportional to the calories for that burned food. So that helps them to connect back their data to what is in the background information, because students learn in the course, some of the first numbers they learn is how many calories per gram are in carbohydrates, fats, and protein. And so they are going to compute those numbers from their data they collect, and then through the questions in the activity form, connect back that learning, but those results to what's in the background and what's in the course, in fact. Okay, and just a little bit more about academic integrity. I already mentioned some of the strengths of using the tabletop science labs in particular, because they've taken great measures to ensure academic integrity or enhance or encourage the academic integrity of the labs and the data. So they have individualized data and results, and there's a built-in authentication and data security process that the labs ensure. So students, I'll show you on another sheet. I don't want to go back, but my name was on the lab activity, and that's one way we ensure that the students are who they are. Of course, it's online. You're never sure who's doing the students' work, and we always have that issue. That's something we can't get around. We don't necessarily have them doing a robo-proctor or anything when they're doing their labs, but at least the student would have name is there, and they would have purchased the lab, and their name would be on that activity sheet as they do the work. And then, as I mentioned, the tabletop science says monitor the internet and issue takedown notices, and also notify anyone who has or the instructor about any infractions. And with 8,000 plus students every year, we do have a number of cases. And so with the tabletop science checking and their diligence in checking for these materials on the internet, our cases have dropped down to, but they've dropped 75%. Now, a little bit about the faculty tab, faculty only tab. There's tips here for faculty on how to successfully help students complete the assignments, and also tips to faculty about how to grade. And then there's data solutions here that help faculty understand what the results should be from the students. And then students are able, faculty are able to correlate the screenshots and the information on the screenshots with the solution sets that they have for each of those, the different labs. And we don't want, we've made a good effort to try to train our faculty not to give out answer keys for the students, but rather to give constructive feedback for each of the labs. So in that case, hopefully the students will learn, okay, I know I can expect this kind of feedback from my instructor, so I should think about this. And, so if it's, that something about the independent variable, or if it's something about whether they reported the actual data. Sometimes students read into questions. We have some very straightforward, simple questions. For example, we might ask them to just state what was the change in the water temperature, and they just need to write that. And at least we know that they're looking at it. They see that there is a number that they collected that reflects the change in the water temperature. And then the faculty flow is similar to the students. We would like the faculty to also make sure they read through the background and procedure steps and the activity form so that they're informed enough to help the students work through. And then that faculty only tab allows the faculty to gain access to data set results and data authentication details, and also some tips for teaching. And then they grade the activity form submitted by the students. Okay, let's do another test. All right, so if you go back to your course menu and go over to biology, and then choose biotechnology. And I'm showing this one because this one has a few more steps. So in this one, first of all, you see it's a bit more sophisticated of an experiment. So the students can do a DNA fragment size if they wanted to. I clicked crime scene. So the data you see here is from a crime scene analysis. There's a paternity case and the species case. So there are a number of options here. And also your options during the experiment are here. So you need to load the samples, then you need to add the top, then you need to dim the lights. And you also see what I mentioned about the authentication. So my name is here, and the professor has information on this sheet about my data set as well. And so the professor will look, and when I fill out my data activity form, the instructor will be able to say, okay, yep, she did or did not present the data that I was expecting. And for the procedure steps, I just want to show you each. So when I chose crime scene, I would have taken these steps. So you see the very specific steps. This is why it's important to read what's on every tab. And so this tells you that sample 1 is a student, sample 2 is from the crime scene, and the remaining samples are from the suspects. So the student will have to interpret those traces and those lines to determine who's most likely guilty in this scenario. And then faculty perception of our lab. So the virtual lab. So we are really grateful that faculty were mostly receptive to going to having the online, having the virtual lab, so 74%. And 74% is pretty high, because even I have been, for most of my life, a very strong proponent of hands-on labs. I was convinced for many years that that is the way you do things. But with the intractable problems we encountered, it was critical that we come up with a solution, and the virtual labs were a good solution for us. And 72% of the faculty prefer the virtual labs over the hands-on labs. And I want to thank Dr. Drew Twitz-Hagen for compiling this data about faculty perception and the faculty comments as well. And student comments, I just want to highlight 2 of them. The virtual lab is the best idea for accomplishing lab work in a digital age with an online course. And then the online simplicity helped encourage me to do my work. So it's a good way for them to feel not intimidated by the work. And this is just how the valence of student comments changed. We just compiled whether they were positive and negative. And before we went to the virtual labs, it was kind of a balance of positive and negative. And then for the physical sciences students, anyway, which is the data I'm showing, it was just, you know, a 9-to-1 ratio of positive comments. And then another one you can test is lenses and mirrors. If you want to, this is a little bit more complicated, because this one involves four different activities, 4 different lenses, but you also have a variation in the input when you use these sliders. And you have sliders that you'll be using for the optic distance and the screen distance. So it's a bit more interactive for the students and a lot more options. And then of course, everything's in the background. So the students have all of the information that they need in the background. And they'll have calculations that are provided in the background, so they can do all the calculations to fill out the data sheets and answer the questions. And then I'm at the wrap-up slide. And basically just restating the objectives, that we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with Tabletop Science Team to solve all of the problems, and even solve problems we didn't even know we had, like the issue about accessibility. And I just want to thank again the Online Equity Conference team for all of this this week, and the ability to be here with you all. And so if there's any discussion or questions, we can do those now, or if you have any questions about the lab specifically, we can discuss those.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Debra. Yeah, it was very cool. I was playing around with it while you were talking, and I actually really appreciate that it wasn't a whole bunch of graphics, that got stuck then, which is what happens with some of them. They make them so fancy that then you're waiting for it to load for 20 minutes, things like that. Yes. Yeah. So we didn't have, or I didn't notice questions in the chat. We had a little difficulty logging in, but that worked out. So are there any other questions that folks might have?
Yeah, and feel free, everyone, to play for the rest of the week that you have access to this. And oh, sorry, I do have one more slide. So I have my contact information. If you have questions for me, you can email me or you can call me, and we can talk about the labs. You have access, so you'll be able to answer a lot of probably your own questions that you might have, but anything beyond what's already in there, I'm here, and I'm willing to discuss our experience. So as you heard, we've been at this since 2017, and we have now 3 sets of courses: the biology and the physical sciences and the nutrition online with the virtual labs.
Great.
And thank you, Amy, for your support.
Yeah, it was very cool. It was like I said, we do a PH1, and the one about the caloric intake was actually pretty fun too. So that was pretty cool.
Deborah, there's a quick question in the chat if you have time. Do you have introductory chemistry class labs?
So the physical sciences has a collection of some chemistry courses in there, but we don't have a full set. And by the way, I forgot to mention, we have 7 labs listed because our courses are only 8 weeks long. But if you work with if you contact the tabletop science, you can see the email in the interface. You contact and maybe discuss possible development, because that's what we did. We worked directly because we already knew who our students were, and so we worked, and we were already offering certain labs, so we worked directly to let tabletop science know this is what we need for our students. And that was one of the takeaways I really wanted you to have from this is our students are a unique population, and it's important. And all of this DEI work that's going on around the nation now, we've been in this business for a while, and so we've known that we have a unique population. And we always say our population is more unique than some others, but I think people are realizing that there's so many people in the United States who could benefit from looking at higher education differently and making it more not only accessible in terms of ADA, but more accessible for people coming from different backgrounds. And so for us, that's been our history. That's been who we are. And so it's important to think about your own students and what your students need. And the simple interface, like Amy just alluded to, is really important. We need the students not to be intimidated just when they open the lab itself.
Yeah, that's sometimes people try to make things too pretty and fancy, and then it just doesn't work quite so well, right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Does anyone else have another question for Debra or about the software? This room's got some really great talks today. So the next one is coaching for equity. And then after that is creating more inclusive classrooms. So it looks like this is a room to be in for the morning. And if anyone needs a link to the schedule, I'm happy to share the programming, but we have some other great things for today. All right.
Thank you all
we've
very
just got
much.
some thank yous. It's very nice to meet you, Debra.
Right, you too.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
And there's the, all right. Yeah. Kevin just put the link in for the chat, the schedule as well. Great. Okay, I'll shut off the recording now.